Thanks for joining us on our webcast today. We're going to be looking today at the TimeControl timesheet system and how using TimeControl to manage your contractors can produce enormous benefits for both contractors and their clients. My name is Chris Vandersloos. I'm the president of HMS Software. HMS is the publisher of TimeControl, and HMS was founded in 1984 as a company specializing in project and timesheet systems. TimeControl was released as a commercial product in 1994 and has numerous technical partners including Microsoft, Oracle, Deltek, and Hard Dollar. When we look at timesheets, we have to think about what people intend with timesheets, why they are deploying a timesheet at all. The most common kind of timesheet would typically be a time and attendance system, which we find with human resources or payroll systems, where it's important to know, did you come to work or did you not come to work, and if you did not, what kind of time were you spending? Was it vacation time or sick leave, that kind of thing? The next most popular type of timesheet would be for finance and billing, where it's important to know the client name, important to know what kind of time you spent working for that client and what rate we're billing you at. Less important to know exactly what you did with your time. For those of us who are involved in project management, very important to be able to have a plan and then manage the actuals against that plan. So project management has a need for timesheets that can integrate and compare the actuals against the original plan. And for a wide range of good governance or compliance issues, there are activity costing systems that require timesheet input. The idea of TimeControl is to be a single point of entry to fulfill all these needs at once, and this is very important when we think of why contractors and clients don't typically use the same timesheet. It's more common that the client requires a project management type of timesheet, and the contractor is using a billing type of timesheet to bill the staff that are there. This can end up causing rather complex timesheet environments. Let's think about the most typical environment when we have contractors. We have a whole range of contractors. Each month, the contractor submits an invoice with some kind of summary of the time spent on your account to you. Each of those invoices arrives in a different format. The timesheet data is typically in a summary format. You have to then get the information to burst that apart, to divide that up by project manager, go to each of your project managers, and ask them to remember what that particular subcontractor might have done last month and whether the timesheet summary is valid. Very important that the project managers are able to control that. Remember that the timesheet information that they're looking at or that they're considering may be as old as 6 weeks old. And that's because the data that is in the invoice, of course, started at the beginning of last month. The project managers will update you with any discrepancies. Once you get those discrepancies, you may need to go back to the contractor and say, well, we have some questions. Now there's some back and forth negotiation that goes on because getting the exact detail of what occurred is hard to do. Ultimately, you may agree on the accepted hours and then hopefully approve payment of the invoice. It's typical in this kind of environment for the invoice to take from 6 to 12 weeks. Before it's approved and paid. When you go with TimeControl, the approvals are handled much simpler. All staff, both contractors and internal staff, use TimeControl, which has an activity-based costing system. We do the approvals naturally for everyone. Contractors and staff are both having the things that they did approved as each week is completed. We can then send back to the contractors the actual hours that were spent during that period. The contractors having that information know already what data was approved, and they can send their invoice knowing that these hours were already approved internally by the client because they've already been given an extract by you of how that data works. The entire system works much, much faster. When we work like this, we can get the approval process from 6 to 12 weeks down to a few days after the invoice is generated because the data is already agreed upon. So key features that we'll look at in TimeControl is how do we have approvals for contractors differ for approvals from staff. How can we include both staff and contractors in the same system, and yet do the things differently for staff than we do for contractors? How do we make sure that we keep the data separate so that contractor data can be sent to contractors without revealing any of our internal staff data? And how do we extract the data that the contractors need at the end of each month in order to be able to generate that report that the contractor can then use to send to you? Okay, let's go take a look at time control and see how some of these features work. Okay, let's take a look at time control. We are going to log in first of all as a contractor as Gail Robinson. You can see that Gail Robinson gets a dashboard that is specific to her needs. In fact, dashboards can be customized so that certain people see certain dashboard items and other people see others. We'll see as we log in as someone else, the dashboard is going to change. But this dashboard could be specific for contractors or specific for contractors at Gail's department. You can see on the right-hand side there are announcements. Announcements too can be filtered based on the type of user. So we might see contractors seeing one set of announcements and internal staff seeing another set of announcements. Gail doesn't care about any of that for now. She just wants to do her timesheet. And when Gail goes to her timesheet and adds a new timesheet, she will have an option to copy from last week or to make start a brand new timesheet from scratch, in which case, in Gail's case, we're going to see some preloaded items. Here we see certain charges that come out of the automation project, to which Gail is assigned. Certain tasks that come out of the Polar project, to which Gail is assigned. And Gail has elected to set up her own preference on her own preferences an internal charge called meetings. And she's going to start off with that to say, well, I spent 2 hours a day this week in meetings. That for sure took up some time. I did that Monday through Friday. Now we don't see Saturday and Sunday on this screen. That's because Gail's elected not to show them for now. They're still there. She could turn them back on, but because she rarely works on a Saturday, Sunday, she's decided not to clutter up her screen with that. Gail can now go in to say, well, and here's where I spent the rest of my time. I worked on the Polar project, and I worked on one thing for automation, the internal controller, and that will finish off my week. She now has a complete timesheet. Now Gail can go on. She can add notes to these lines. She could add notes to the entire timesheet. She could see put in expenses. But for Gail, she's really done. Where this is going to go now is to her supervisor, Tom Logan. So we're going to release that for approval. Time Control will do automated validation checks and then give the information to Tom Logan. In this case, the automation checks have been passed. Gail's timesheet is now going to be given to Tom. We can see Tom now owns it, and Gail is no longer able to change it. From here, it could go from Tom, the supervisor, to a contract manager. You can have different people use different approval paths in time control, and this can be very useful to send internal staff onto one approval path and contractors onto another. Once the data has gone to posting, which is where Gail's timesheet is going next, we can use it for a variety of purposes. I'm going to log in as an administrator. The very first thing we see is that Joseph, an administrator, has delegate authority over Eric Vincent. That means that Joseph can log in as Eric, and time control will track for auditing purposes that Joseph was actually in the system while he fulfills Eric's responsibilities. If we have a contractor who is away for a period of time and we need to complete out their timesheet or deal with it administratively, this can be a good function to use. In this case, that Joseph's going to log in as himself. You can see that Joseph's dashboard is quite different. He's got a pie chart to show me hours by charge type, or billable versus non-billable, or R&D versus non-R&D. He can see hours spent on different projects. And all of that can be customized so that we can give Joseph what he likes. In the background, Joseph can maintain a variety of tables and effects in order to keep things separate. One of the things that we can do is we can have user-defined fields here at the bottom of the employee table used to define what kind of worker we have. Is it a salary worker, a wage worker, or let me edit that and add contractor to that list. We're going to add a new type, call that contractor. And when we save that, that will become one of our pop-up values. So now that we can have that type, we can use that for filtering and for other purposes to say, well, this is a contractor staff person, and that's how we're going to identify them. So this is one way that we can use to identify different personnel in the system. We can also determine, as we can see for Gail down here at the bottom, we can determine information like approval paths. Here we can see the approval path went from Gail to Tom. Here we could have added a contract manager who would review Gail's information. We can also see that there were default rates. In fact, Gail had a selection of rates on her timesheet, but that's all managed from the rate table. And we can use rates with different values. We don't display the values to the end user, but we can have a rate for certain kinds of projects for Gail, where she might charge us one rate for one kind of project and another rate for another kind of project. And here we might determine the internal cost to us of Gail versus how we're going to bill that to the project or how we're going to use that for billable time. That allows us to very quickly determine what did we pay out to Gail for that hour of work and what are we billing for that hour of work or realizing as value for that hour of work internally. So we don't show this information to Gail, but that's part of the definition in the background that allows us to do reporting and exporting of this data. All of these tables become very important when we get to reports that shows that information for different kinds of purposes. If we take one of the reports in the system, you can see that we could select information by contractor or a date range to show what that information would look like. And TimeControl can now show us a pie chart plus hours per contractor for this period and the internal cost of what we spent on that contractor. Divided it up by saying, well, where do we spend that time? It looks like in this period, a lot of time was spent in training, less time spent on those projects. So important to know if we're looking at that contractor. When we send data out to as we were saying, send this data out to a contractor at the end of the month, we might want to be able to send an extract of data, but only for that contractor. Well, TimeControl allows us to do that by setting up a filter. We created a filter here called Select a Contractor. This is a type of filter which asks us for the values as we do the report. In this case, it says who is the contractor, and I might say, well, that's Baker Industries, and I've got to say the date work performed is between the 1st of August and the end of August. And so now I have work that will go out for one period of time and be sent out as a flat Excel file for that contractor, for Baker Industries, to be able to see the hours that we have approved in this month for their contractors. Baker should now be able to look at that and determine if they're ready to send us an invoice. If their invoice matches these hours, we have nothing left to work on in the approval process. We've already approved all those hours during the matrix approval process in TimeControl. Now, matrix approvals in TimeControl happen in the project manager validation screen. We saw approvals for Gail's work where she sent it to Tom, but now we can see that I can get line items, say for the Polar project, Polar 1.1, I can see, Gail put in some hours on that project, and I can actually look at those hours and see where they went. In fact, we can see we have adjustments to those hours already. We can approve an entire person or an entire project, say that project has been approved in its entirety, or I can reject that to be able to deal with it later. But a project manager, once he's approved those hours, those become hours that we can now extract and send back to the contracting company, knowing that we have already approved that work. The hours can also then go back to a project management system like Microsoft Project or Primavera or Deltek's Open Plan to be able to be processed in that way. One final way of looking at data is something called the drill down analyzer. Well, the drill down analyzer allows us to take a flat list of data, so a very straightforward list, but then immediately subdivide it by, say, client. If I just drag client to the top, now we'll have subtotals by client, and then by project. So now I'm looking at the Acme Corporation, underneath that the project. And so I can see different, underneath Acme and underneath internal, we have different projects. So for Acme, I can see 3000 had 172 hours, and the auto project had 140, Polar project had 44. I can go down level by level into this data, all the way into each person. So the drill down analyzer allows us very, very quickly to be able to answer questions that come from management, like in the last quarter, how much time did we spend on internal meetings that were done by contractors? where a contractor's attended. How much time are we spending on contractors to be at our own internal meetings? This is the kind of work that the drill down analyzer could answer in seconds. And once we're ready with that information, if we say we have the right information, we can send that out to Excel for inclusion in other reports, or send it out as a PDF file and so on, just as we can with all of the other reports. So the idea of time control for contractors is we're allowed to use the security in the system to divide out the work, to be able to have different security for staff versus contractors, to be able to do different kinds of approvals, and to approve both organizationally and line by line for the project, to be able to have matrix approvals of that contractor data. All of that serves to know that the data has been pre-accepted when we get to the end of that month and have to hand that data off to finance. Okay, let's go back now to our slides and take a look at some final points and wrap up. Okay, let's look at wrapping up. One of the things that we talked about was the ability to do approvals both by organization and by line item. This is something that we call the matrix approval process in time control. It allows us to do approvals in one direction in one phase of the approval process, where we summarize the entire timesheet to one's supervisor through the organizational matrix, and then allows us to turn the data on its side and allow project managers to approve line item by line item. Now, we didn't see it in this demonstration, but time control also works on your smartphone or tablet. So you can see your information, do your timesheet, do your approvals on your BlackBerry, your iPhone, your Android device, your Windows mobile device, or on a tablet, Android or iPad type of tablet. So you're able to run the web browser in that area and see that as a web application. Very effective if you're away from the office. Some of the key benefits that we've talked about that are possible when you put both your staff and your contractors on time control is an incredible shortcut to the invoice approval process. So all those hours that we talked about with not having time control, with every time sheet system from each contractor trying to be used into one integrated invoicing process, all that time gets saved. Even the contractors are going to save that time. You're able, when you're using a single system and using activity-based timesheets like we have in time control, you can find out not just when the contractors are working or how much time they've spent, but also what they're working on. This is a tremendous ability to focus your contractors in activities that you know will be of better value to you. You can also take a look at the comparison of how long it takes contractors to finish the tasks you've assigned, and even compare that to what it would have taken or what internal staff are taking in terms of effort to complete similar tasks. That can also guide the appropriate work to the appropriate contractors or internal staff. It gives you a good opportunity to take a look at what the return on investment is for your contracting personnel. Contractors get benefits too. They're able to get paid faster, and what company doesn't like that? For the client, for you, you're able to negotiate an early payment discount if that's something that you'd like, because now you're able to approve the invoice in days, not in weeks. Some of the key features that we've shown you or we've talked about: links to project management software, a flexible architecture, being able to use the system online or on premises, being able to track expenses as well as labor, being able to do vacation tracking and vacation approvals, and links to a variety of finance systems such as SAP, Oracle, Dynamics, and others. Time control has been used for compliance with the Defense Contract Audit Agency, with the European Time Directives, with Sarbanes-Oxley, FMLA, and numerous other government compliance requirements. HMS has been a partner with Microsoft, with Oracle, and for many years, and with Deltek. And time control is used in conjunction with these types of products, as well as with financial systems like SAP and Oracle, in order to bring the best of breed together. You may recognize some of our clients, whether by knowing their logo or by knowing them by name. Time control is used in a wide variety of industries where it has been deployed effectively. We'd be happy to provide you with references or work with you on references in your particular industry or particular geographic area. Speaking of geographic area, TimeControl is sold around the world. We have dealers, distributors, or offices virtually all over, and can assist you with finding the right partners to work with you on your particular requirements. We think of TimeControl as the Swiss Army knife of timesheets. It is the most flexible timesheet in the market, and flexible enough that you'll think that for your requirements that we wrote it just for you. If you'd like more information about TimeControl, please stop by the TimeControl website. You can try TimeControl for free. There's a free hosted trial at freetrial.timecontrol.com, or you can find out more about HMS software at our hmssoftware.ca site, or contact us either on the websites or directly by email at info@hmssoftware.ca. Thank you very much for your time and your attention today, and we hope we'll be able to help you with your contractor needs and using TimeControl to be more efficient at managing contractors.